Mic check 1 2 1 2. Mic check 1 2 1 2. If anyone in the chat can hear me, just push one. All right. Thank you for the confirmation, man. Welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is open chat number 38. Please hit the like button as you come in, share the video if possible, hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust, including those posted on the community tab that we post on a weekly basis. If you want to engage in the conversation, there'll be a link in the chat for you to join the panel. When you click on the link, you'll be in the waiting room. Make sure you raise your hand, or else you will not be acknowledged, or you'll be sitting there for a long time before you get advanced to the panel. So I just wanted to actually touch on some of this stuff that we engaged in on Gab Talk Media. We had an interview over there at Gab Talk Media, so shout out to Gab Talk for having us over there. And there was some commentary that was made in the chat, and I just wanted to address that. We didn't get a whole lot of time to really engage people from the chat as we wanted to, even though there was a link dropped. Some people did not want that smoke. I think that's just me being biased. And there was a statement by a certain individual who said that, you know, I'm from the streets, you know, I was a pookie, you know, I turned out to be, you know, a productive person within society. Let me say this, man, because I get tired of seeing these sort of comments. Not that I have a problem with the person who made the comment. I get tired of seeing these comments about street credibility. What has your street credibility done for the community? You know, I see this with a lot of BMs, and the thing is that they'll talk about, oh, you know, I caught a, you know, I was in jail for a homicide or manslaughter. You know, I used to do this, I used to do that, and it's like, why are you explaining that to us? What does that really mean? What do you hope to gain from having that on your resume? Because where this society is going, your street credibility means absolutely nothing. And I think what's happening here is we've taken the prison politics and injected into social media. And what I mean by that is that certain BMs and BWs who support those BMs are taking the street aspect, the prison aspect, and have perpetuated that within social media to make it seem as if they're more credible than, let's say, your upwardly mobile BM. And that somehow, some way, your worldview doesn't matter because his worldview as a street guy or a pookie somehow gives him precedence over your views, your world views. But then I always ask the question, if your credibility is so strong, where's the institutions? Where's the infrastructure? You never seem to get any sort of response. And the ones who have built it did not build it on their own, right? They had to go through a loss of freedom and privileges or what privilege they had to conduct themselves within society to actually build something later. But the little bit that they have established for themselves, there are thousands of other BMs through society that have never committed a crime or run the streets that have done that same exact thing 1,000 times over. So why does this person feel or see themselves as being a credible person of interest in these discussions that they have to enunciate themselves within the circles of upwardly mobile men and say, well, I came from the streets. Back in 1999, I caught a body. I caught a homicide. It was, back in 1997, I was doing, I was locked doing manslaughter. I got locked for manslaughter. I got hit with a racketeering charge or something like that. They're always using the criminality aspect in the adverse adverse childhood experience as a point of reference for their credibility. It's kind of like wounded warriors, right? You know, they was in a Humvee in Afghanistan or Iraq, and an IED lifted their vehicle up off the ground, and now, with your help and a few dollars, you can actually contribute. It's like, no, wait a second, man. We need to be having more progressive discussions. Not, I don't care how many bodies you caught and how often you duck police and your engagement with the criminal justice system or the injustice system. Like, that doesn't mean anything to me or to us. Why are you bringing that resume to us? That's not applicable here. I don't go to Microsoft and apply for a system architect's role by saying, I went to the school of hard knocks. That doesn't really apply because it doesn't have any credibility. And so I just find that to be very interesting, man, is that some people keep perpetuating this, this sort of perspective to thinking black men. Like, why does that matter? And if you're trying to impress us, in what way would that impress us? Hey, what's going on, Super Triz?
What's going on, Mike?
Let me boost my volume up because I don't think I can hear you.
What's going on, Mike? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's basically it's you hear these proclamations because it resonates with a certain demographic of women within the ADOS community, and consequently, men have become accustomed, or certain men have become accustomed uh, to using that as a resume, so to speak. Like, this is how they validate themselves,
Mm-hmm.
because there is no official rites of passage for manhood. So it's kind of like it's kind of developed because it garners the attention of the opposite sex.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's the reason why men have just become so accustomed to using that. You know, unfortunately, like you said, it really has no relevance amongst the amongst society at large. It is counterproductive to community, um, and it's basically a testament to self-serving interest. That's all it is.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these things, they benefit only yourself, and it really has no trajectory, as you like to say, scalability. So this is the reason why, amongst other cultures, um, it really is a negative you know, only within our community is perceived as being something positive, something that you can boast about. Um, and as you said, I think that you find even amongst some thinking, quote unquote, thinking black men, sometimes they may fall into that trap because a lot of times that's the only way people actually acknowledge uh, whatever message you're trying to convey. Like depending on the audience that you're speaking to, um, whatever message that you're trying to convey will fall on deaf ears unless they feel as though if you validated uh, through the quote unquote hood systems of means testing, which is some type of criminal record or some type of engagement in criminality. Like I've even heard like some people will even compare criminality and say, well, you were small time. You know, you're not a real like now the big thing is scammers, credit card scammers, and
Mhm.
so a lot of these credit card scammers because they for so long didn't get validation within the community because the perception was that if you were a male scammer, you had to have an alternative lifestyle, like no conventional lifestyle man would
Mhm.
engage in credit card scamming. That was something that was relegated to women and alternative lifestyle men. Now, uh, you know, because of that bravado, it's like, well, I made more money than you. I'm an official scammer, and like now they have to project a sense of pseudo masculinity along with their credit card scheme, as opposed to being a white collar criminal. Now they have to have um, some type of masculine element to whatever it is that they're doing on the credit card side of things. So it just really it's really all nonsense, as
Mhm.
you said.
Mhm. Hey, what's going on, Sabidon? Hmm.
So no, I'm still in the office late night. I'm about to get out of here. It's ironic that you're talking about this. I'm gonna finish up with this with a few of these systems, but I'm gonna just kind of sit back because I actually want to speak on that. You had a great opening, and I want to put that in perspective, both as a man who is in corporate and as well as a guy who's been through the belly of the beast. So I'm gonna just kind of sit back and listen for a minute, and I'm gonna just raise my hand when I'm ready to engage.
All right.
Thanks.
It, yeah, Super Triz really did an excellent job elaborating on what I'm saying. Um, I see this a lot, and it's interesting that Super Triz brings up the BW factor, right? The BW seems to um adore this sort of perspective uh, because she has re-articulated and redefined um, what masculinity is for Black men, for BMs. And in her attempts in continuous approach of how she engages Black masculinity, she seems to have this understanding or perception of BMs as a whole, that this is how you define masculinity for BMs, but not for WM. So when they interracially engage with WMs, they seem to remove that benchmark and remove this application of criminality and waywardness. And so we know that it's not we know that it's not authentic. It's an actually synthetic sort of approach to how they deal with um, BMs, and that if you do not fall within that construct, you're suddenly a unworthy BM. You're unworthy of respect, and you're unworthy of any sort of relationship, even denying you your proper existence within society itself, or Black society itself. And I just find that you see so many BMs come through and try to say, well, you know, I did this and I did that. I got caught with the burner, you know, and I had to go, I had to do time. I had to do this. I had to do that. I'm like, where, okay, so where are you going with that? Where are you going with that perspective? We're moving into the fourth industrialization of the global society, and you're telling us that the criminal and justice system that you partake in has merit in this new fourth industrial society. I find that to be very dubious. Um, it gets to a point where it gets to a point where you feel like you know, they're shutting down, man. And so a certain individual came on the panel from Gab Talk Media, and he thought that people were downplaying him because he didn't speak the King's English. It's not so much that you didn't speak the King's English or that you weren't college educated. It's the point of the matter that your past dealings within the manosphere as we know it, the Black manosphere as we know it, has been largely nefarious. Just last week or 2 weeks ago, you were, you know, engaging with Tommy Sotomayor from a position of disrespect. Now all of a sudden you want to come on here and talk about BMs don't get along, and that's why you have, you know, these various versions of the manosphere. No, that has nothing to do with it. But see, you want to project that out there and make it seem like you have the absolute answer and you don't. And because of your life experiences with the criminal and justice system, as well as the criminality aspect, in predominantly Black society, you think that you have this sort of worldly perspective that we have to accept because you say so. No, it doesn't work that way.
Well, the argument is often that um, when BMs, ADOS BMs, in particular those that are upwardly mobile,
Mhm.
um, seek out refuge um, and other areas where there is a presence of the diaspora, particular Hispaniola, South America, perhaps even the continent. Um, those that even what they call, what Edward Anderson likes to say, intercultural uh, intercultural relations, women of the diaspora, but not ADOS women. Um, that in actuality, by doing so, you are abandoning the community. As a matter of fact, if when you actually relocate to areas outside of your community of origin, you are in essence abandoning your community. And the argument is that uh, you actually have a stake here, so why would you leave? Um, and that's funny because how can you have a stake yet engage in activity which has a negative consequence for society at large, right? You claim to have a stake, but you reference a criminal past
Mhm.
that indicates that you have no respect for your stake in this particular community, or maybe even you don't really feel you have a stake in this community at all, or in America. This is the reason why you engage in criminal behavior uh, that is outside the confines of your social contract. Um, and what I find is that um, these type of proclamations, um, they're kind of hypocritical, and they kind of contradict each other. Um, and so in essence, um, a secondary argument is that the individuals uh, that adhere to the societal or the social contract
Mhm.
are in essence sheep
Mhm.
and are conformists, and that the individuals that quote unquote buck the
Mhm.
system
Mhm.
are true revolutionaries and um, they have the gall, a mitigated gall, to challenge the status quo.
Mhm.
And this is the reason why uh, their criminal past should in essence be respected, because um, they refuse to be dominated
Mhm.
by the greater populace. But in actuality, um, you refuse to be dominated by the greater populace. You engage in criminal activities. Yet, once you become incarcerated, you have to adhere to prison politics.
Mhm.
Prison politics, which relegate you to being separated by ethnicity,
Mhm.
um, and there's still a hierarchy system
Mhm.
that you have to adhere to. So, in actuality, there is no escaping order. As much as you try to circumvent order, um,
Mhm.
at some point you have to submit to it.
Wh-
So what exactly is the argument for individuals that say that they have somehow uh, circumvented the dominance that all of us who are quote unquote upperly motor have acquiesced to?
Mhm. Yeah, and the thing is, man, that kept giving Nipsey Hussle all this credit, and I'm scratching my head, I'm saying, why does he get all this credit, but the other BMs who are upperly mobile are seen as bad people? It's really crazy that um they flipped the script on what productivity really means. So now they're calling they're calling these sort of BMs street, the real entrepreneurs of the community. If they just had if the criminal justice system wasn't in their way, somehow they would be really 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 successful in you BMs who go to these HBCUs. You all are the real sellouts and everything else. How can you be a sellout going to an HBCU? Fuck.
Yeah, yeah.
What's going on, MOT?
What's going on, man? Like, people need to understand why we're having these conversations.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why we're having this conversation is there has been no change on the part of those people. There has been no recompense on the part of those people. And the only thing they know how to do is change the channel to sex whenever you do try to hold them responsible.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like, I'm quite proud not to have any of those sexual relations with those people who they're entrapped to. I don't know about anybody else, but I'm quite happy to not have those experiences
Mm-hmm.
that seem to be mired them in the muck. And like, and like what these people don't understand is that our race is behind primarily because of those actions, not really racism.
Mm-hmm.
And and the outcomes of those actions, they have just really just kind of not taken responsibility for, and somehow has blamed people like us, the people who have been doing things right, for those actions. And it's like, listen, man, at the end of the day, it's either you are proud of the circumstances or you're not.
Mm-hmm.
It's either you are responsible for these circumstances. Everybody wanted to be the select male and all that kind of stuff, but the moment you start talking about responsibility and the accountability for the state of things all of a sudden nobody wants to be a select male anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where we are with everything, because they have to understand that you ain't about to get out of this thing with time served. That is not how this is gonna work. So we're gonna talk about all this stuff,
Yeah.
everything. They could call it, well, you just want people to split up. Like, nah, man. What you want is a shut mouth to your past actions. And we talk about the past action so that way you won't try to weasel your way back in here and try to be on top, because they want their spot back. They want the control back.
Mm-hmm.
They want the narrative back. But they can't do anything like that in something called the information age.
Mm-hmm. That's a
It
good point.
just
That's a very good point, because this certain individual came on and said, the problem is economics. I have to beg to differ, because these
economics. What?
yeah the spending power of the community,
Hasn't
collectively
changed.
speaking, hasn't changed, but it rivals that of poorer countries. So how can you say that it's an issue of economics, in that if if BMs just if BMs just worked together, that this would solve the issue. In reality, these sort of people who come with this resume are looking to leverage the economic and academic achievements as a form of infrastructure so that they can get on the same board and create this sort of flat plane sort of perspective, right? So if he gets on and he's a part of the same investment group, then that gives him an inward opportunity to be a part of the growth that's going to come from the hard work of those individuals, but not him. He wants to ride the coattail of those individuals without actually putting in the same amount of work. So just yesterday, he was calling them upperly mobile BMs coons, and they sellouts, and you know, they don't get along in their own groups. But now it's about economic empowerment. Now all of a sudden he wants to get on board too.
Okay, well, here's the problem.
Mhm.
I mean, you know, I'm gonna use the word. I mean, that's blockchain 1.0.
Mhm.
What they're
Mhm.
trying to do. I mean, because it's like not really the individual, because I'm cool with that individual, but at the end of the day,
Mhm.
they have to understand that this is a cultural
Mhm.
problem, not just with him. There's 1,000 dudes just
Mhm.
like even within this sector.
Mhm.
You know, they get on the panels with BWs and they just have a whole rage fest against dudes who they can't really net,
Mhm.
and they make it look like we have somehow sold out the community because our lack of social type of, what is it, loyalty to them, when they never had any loyalty to
Right.
us. It's, period. Like
Right.
dude, like there's not even five. Man, what's going on with the mic? Yeah, I mean, like, there's not a period of time where educated, upwardly mobile brothers have ever been respected by any of these types
Mhm.
of people until you leave.
Right.
Like, like, listen, if our culture had that,
Mhm.
why would any black man be dating anyone of any other type of ethnicity or background if they
Mhm.
got everything within house?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so it's kind of like, if you leave the choice in their control, they're fine with you. But the moment you put the choice in your control, you're a sellout based on the person who you choose that they have to somehow approve of. And somehow this is a respectful system and process in total. I don't get it, man.
Yeah, well, they want a socialist structure, right? They want the black community to be more socialist for their own personal agenda, right? So they would never have $1 million in their pocket. But if you get 10,000 black men to put up $10,000 a piece or $1,000 a piece, then you would end up with that $1 million. And then that puts you in that economic demographic. And that's what they're trying to do. Um, but when
Well,
they
essentially,
were running the streets and they was, you know, handling here, and there, and that Pyrex pot was cooking, they never shared their wealth with anybody else. They never, their earnings, their yearly earnings. They went out and bought the fanciest gear, all the materialism. They went out and got that NSX. It was tearing up the streets in Philly, and no one was to question them. But now that they've fallen off, now it's all about BMs need to work together. But he wasn't, they wasn't talking about BMs working together when they were getting it the fast way, the ski mask way.
well, it's essentially a lot of double dipping going on because
Mhm.
a lot of individuals will reference
Mhm.
their economically disenfranchised upbringing, where they were the recipients of public assistance,
Mhm.
and anybody who's paid taxes has contributed to them in that particular regard. Then when they participated in criminal activities and were subsequently incarcerated, they were housed room and board on the state dime, which is extrapolated from a tax base. And now once they're out, they want the same upwardly mobile individuals that contributed via taxes to give back to the community. It's like, how many times are you going to pass around a collection plate and act like we haven't given anything yet?
Mhm.
We've already given what we're supposed to give. And everybody that's existing in America has somehow benefited. Um, and so it's like, we're not obligated to give anything else because we've
Mhm.
already given everything.
Mhm.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like when I look at my year to date taxes, how much I've paid in taxes this year so far, it's mind boggling.
Mhm.
Like what more do I got to give?
Yeah, let's hear from Ty City.
What's up, bros?
Chilling, fam. What's
Going
going on?
on? I'm just chiming in, man. Um, when you bring up, some of these guys look at it like a badge of honor to have criminal records on them. You know what I'm saying? These stripes.
Mhm.
The way I view it and the way I always seen it, even growing up in the middle of a bunch of criminal activity, was that shit ain't nothing to brag about.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? And it brings a lot of shame.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? So when I hear somebody trying to make something seem like something like that into an accolade, it just shows that it's the opposite. You know what I'm saying? Um, People who have uh gained any kind of success in the streets, like, they not bragging about it. You know what I'm saying? These people are paranoid. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not funny. It's you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Um, I think it's been a cultural shift
Mhm.
where it probably started around, you know what I'm saying, the late '80s, early '90s.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
my father was doing his thing,
Mhm.
and my mom was benefiting from it.
Mhm.
You know, he had me and my sister. He had two women pregnant at the same time, and they both were okay with it because he was the man.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So as soon as all of that went away, he got the conspiracy charge, went to the feds. You could just see, like, everybody was blaming him for everything, and it was crazy.
Yeah.
And I was even taught to view what happened in a certain way. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying?
Mhm.
But like you said, um, yeah, whenever that type of productivity is not the same as, you know what I'm saying,
Mhm.
proactive productivity.
Yeah.
And whenever this group is popping, they polar opposites of each other.
Mhm.
They probably won't even be in the same spaces
Mhm.
until, like you said,
Mhm.
later on.
Yeah. I mean, they're trying to equivalate the work ethic of the criminality aspect to the non-criminality aspect. So the 9 to 5, 40 hours a week, that is the same thing. And it's like, nah, man, you risking your freedom is not the same as someone doing overtime, getting time and a half, to increase their productivity so that they have better results later on, because they want to contribute more to their 401k or their IRA, or because they want to, uh, have their company sponsor them for their master's degree or their bachelor's degree or something like that. There's a fair exchange, or somewhat of a fair exchange, in the world of legalized work. But now with these individuals have done, these BMs have done, is that they've taken the prison politic aspect and said, well, because I've gone through all of this turmoil, you have to give me some form of credit. I'm like, well, what kind of credit do you want? Because I can't equivalate your experience to what we're trying to do. We just got finished talking about, opportunities in space exploration last night. You got to explain to me how moving that Pyrex pot and cooking them things up is the same as putting satellites in space. You got to explain that to me.
Well, Mike,
Well,
it's like, okay.
I was gonna say that in essence, there's no such thing as a free lunch. So besides the obvious things that we can actually uh, point to the victim, there's issues like, say, for instance, credit card scamming, right? Where the argument is, well, it doesn't affect the quote unquote black community. We taking it from the quote unquote greater populace, so it really doesn't affect. But at the end of the day, the interest rate, the annual fees that we all pay for credit here in the United States is reflective of the losses that have to be compensated for a particular company to maintain fiduciary solvency. So there is no such thing as a free lunch. Like, we're all paying for whatever it is that criminally minded individuals do. Beyond the mere incarceration, but like just the actual sequestering of law enforcement resources to patrol the streets and to investigate crimes and that are done. It's like all of this stuff comes at a cost. Everything that's being done comes at a cost, and it's not like you can specifically select a demographic of individuals outside of financial stratification. You can't select a group of individuals to finance these illegal exploits. And so it's the actual cost is amortized across the entire population. So everybody is paying for it. So whatever revenue they think that they're generating, there is a cost to the black community. And so, this is the reason why we have to look at net contribution. So you can say, oh, well, look what, XYZ has done for the community. But then we look back at this particular person's criminal past, and then we ask ourselves, what was the cost of his or her criminal exploits? And now when we take into calculation of that particular person's criminal exploits, we find that they're in a negative. They still got a lot of work to do before we can actually hand out praises and accolades.
Yeah. I have a simpler way to explain it. Way simpler. When you go from one school to another, there are things that are called transferable credits, and then there are things that are called non-transferable credits. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to make their non-transferable credits from all the bullshit that they've engaged in and they're trying to retrofit it to like current society and that shit don't work that way. You got to go back and take all these classes all over again because they're not transferable to the real world. That's all it is. They want to make the non-transferable credits transferable credits and try to equalize and mirror stuff and do all this behind the back and all this kind of stuff. And that's just the way it is, man.
That's a very good point, MOT.
Yeah.
Hey, let me tell you something, bro. I'm gonna flip that analogy, right? When I was going to tech school up in Pennsylvania, I got in real big trouble. You know what I'm saying? I got 2 felonies and I got two felonies and 2 misdemeanors. I got 2 counts for harassment on officer and 2 counts for assault on an officer, right? So I'm in tech school. They picked me up from school the next day because the school in the middle of nowhere. They knew I had to be a student. Blah blah blah. They picked me up from school. Um, I ended up. I get out of there. I get handed a good job. Right. I go in there and the guy goes, "Do you have any experience?" I said, "No. I just graduated tech school." He
Mhm,
said, "Do you have anything on your background?"
mhm,
And that was one of the hardest things that I ever had to do is tell somebody that I had got a criminal uh I got a criminal background now.
mhm.
And some kind of way between Texas and Pennsylvania being a Commonwealth state, it didn't transfer to Texas.
No, it can't because it's the
Cross state
quarry.
line.
Yeah, the quarry stays within the state line itself.
Yeah, so those credits were about to transfer or could have
Hmm.
transferred, bro.
Hmm.
And that was a really good job that I got a lot of experience from, and that, and you know what I'm saying, like it ain't no escaping it.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah,
Tell
man.
you, man, the past matters and the track record matters a lot. And they want to try to make it look like, well, I'm black, so you should forgive me. I'm like, no, you're black. That means I shouldn't forgive you
Hmm.
about shit.
But
Yeah. So
another thing you said earlier, MOT, about the blockchain. If they
yeah,
start putting criminal records on blockchains, that is a irreversible record.
It's
It's
oh
on
immutable.
there
sure.
forever.
It's immutable. Now they will never put it on the blockchain because Corey reform allows people who have served their time not to be discovered from a legalization standpoint. So it violates your civil rights. So
Yeah, I
all
mean,
that stuff is gonna go out the window.
yeah, I mean, so what I mean by blockchain is from the block, that type of blockchain.
Yeah, yeah. A herringbone or a Cuban link or
Yeah.
something like that. A Figueroa, right
It's
on the
immutable.
corner. Yeah,
It's immutable.
on the corner. But yeah, that's what's Let me advance this person. That's what's being promoted among these individuals, man. And when you try to challenge them, they try to force their or superimpose their views onto you, and it's like, nah, man, I'm not really seeing where you fit within this puzzle. Not really seeing it. Let's go to Cyberdon. He got his hand up, man.
All righty. Hey, what's going on, everybody?
Chilling, chilling,
So,
chilling.
like I said, I was going to chime in once I was done, but I wanted to sit back a little bit. So, much respect to all my brethren, all of y'all. Um, I'm going to put it in this perspective, and I don't mean to sound condescending in what I say, so I hope, the brother don't take it that way, but I'm going to kind of lay it out how it goes because, I actually, like I said, I did real time for real crime. It was on me. And, I made that journey
Mm,
um, to the place where you guys, where we are now. And, I can 100,000% identify with what that individual was trying to pass, which just not going to pass the bar with us. And so I'm going to start inside. And the way it works, gentlemen and ladies out there, is that, when you're in, um, right from the gate, there's kind of like a metering system or a system where we're trying to jockey to see who's who, what's what, who fits what.
mm,
And, my main man said it earlier is that, a lot of times people will compare the reason that they have, they're in the situation that they're in based on street cred. And so when you get inside, street cred actually is heavier on the inside than it is on the outside because you have to think this is like being in the pros. The best ball players are there. If you came in any other way, if you came in through JUCO rather than coming in through Duke or through a big college, You may be just as good or better than a lot of other people, but you came from a little school. Nobody knows you. You understand? And
I'm a
so
D4.
with exactly. And so with that said, once you're there, I'll tell you guys from real life experience. Um, you know, brothers are rewarded. Pookie, and I don't even like to say it, but I'm gonna just use it here tonight. Pookie's rewarded, when he's down because the culture
Hmm.
is hyper, hyper omega perpetuated for you to retain that street credibility while you're down because depending on the type of street credibility that you have or who you know or how much or how often you stay out of the way,
Hmm.
that makes a difference between whether or not you get stuck in the side or stuck in the liver with that hawk or with that shank. So that's one thing. And so when in there you have individuals who decide, you know what, this ain't for me. And when I get out, when I'm done with this, man, I'm going totally the other way. Right away, the war and the battle and the separation and segregation starts there. Unless you can defend yourself real well, or you have, like I said, a circle of people who you're cool with, you're marked from that point, the good dude, whatever, such and such and such. The only difference is you still inside, the fence with the rest of the dogs. And so at any given time or point, you got to bite back or get bit and lay down. And so, the prison guards, really don't have anything to do with it. And so when you get out, when you're outside of that, you come back out to the working world, to the real world. A couple of things happen that are very interesting. And I'll tell you guys coming through it all, is that number one, there's an expectation that a lot of people are not aware of. There's an expectation for those people who are still in there, still in the streets, and they have an expectation that either you came home soft or you came home enhanced. And what I mean by enhanced, you're tougher, you're more desensitized, or you came home a little bit smarter so that you can do more criminal activity. You can do more things to make yourself basically, instead of refining you into a better person, that expectation is that, you spent all that time, you was all around all those killers and dealers and willers, and you didn't come home to be a more refined gangster. What was you doing with your time? This is a real conversation, real guys with real money, and I can tell you this happens. And
Hmm.
so at that point, what happens is the Pookie, right? The guy who all of a sudden was talking this and talking that. Now, oh, his street cred this or street cred that, and now they're talking sensible, but they're blaming the gentlemen or the guys who didn't have to go through that, who didn't go through that, who didn't mess themselves up, shoot themselves in the foot, and they've been flying their airplane, driving their car straight, taking chances, but taking chances in the real world fairly and squarely, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I don't mean square by like soft, but I mean like straight up and narrow. They're shooting them down, but they're trying to get on that same pedestal and that same float. The reason that that happens is because, well, when they're back in the real world and the gangster card doesn't work, the gangster card has expired, the street credibility doesn't get renewed, it doesn't get beefed back up. What happens is you have on your hands a person who might have been really thorough. And that's really how I say it, a person who's been really thorough. But that thoroughness, they can't, that currency of being thorough in the streets no longer has value. It's kind of like a fiat currency where all of a sudden, mm, Mike's not willing to take, my $100 bill in exchange for bread and groceries. He's like, nah, I need something a little bit more solid than that. That $100 bill ain't gonna work. I need a different currency. Your money's no good here.
It went
Go
through
sit down
inflation.
somewhere. You know what I'm saying? And so that gangster card becomes essentially a fiat currency in the real world, that it loses its value. It loses its thoroughness. You can't cash it in, and when you can't cash it in, the gangster or the street thug or the street guy who had the credibility before finds himself in a very interesting predicament. Either has to go to the female who still holds the impression that his street credibility holds value in her eyes based on a totally unrealistic expectation and reality that's painted by something else that's a figment of real reality. Or, so he goes and lays up with her, or he has to say, you know what? There's some real beast out here in the real world, and that's those individuals who either went to school, went to the Ivy Leagues, got themselves together, got their life, got their act together, or maybe the guys who didn't go to school, but they hustled while they was out. They hustled and they made their way and they got themselves together too from the hard knocks from the streets by learning from good and bad experiences. And they both of these classes of men, us and the other classes of us, have something that's substantial and real that we present um, as men in the world. Hence, we're real dogs with real teeth, and we will bite. We can bite you and can harm you. And so, what happens is that, um, the guy with the street cred, remember, he doesn't have that type of leverage. He doesn't have that type of foundation, to formulate. So what he does, the only thing that he can do to survive in the ecosystem of the real world at this point is that he has to find a way to kind of follow your moves, follow Super Triz or follow MOTs or Mike's moves and emulate and gain just a little bit of taste of the success. And he see that that success is real, it's sweet, and it has real value. But at the same time, he has to shoot you down because if he can shoot you down, if he can just get you off your orbit or off your axis just a little bit and distract you, then he can steal clients, he can steal customers, he can steal some credibility just a little bit. And once he gets enough credibility under his belt, um, he can do well for himself. But to the other brother's point, and Mike, you said it, and I'm gonna really hyper expound on this. Having the blicky or the biscuit or the burner and talking about what guys did on the streets
Hmm.
or what they did and how they did it. To be honest, man, when you're successful, when you're chasing this success, you're working hard,
Hmm.
you're around people who have never lived that life. And to be honest, it is the biggest detriment. And people who are doing that out there, um, they are hyper ignorant because they haven't yet sat at the table, rolled up their sleeves, had a glass of wine or coffee with somebody who can ultimately change your trajectory or change your life just on the strength of a conversation that they'll say, you know what, you've been down, but you're doing this, you're doing that. You know what, I like you. Check this out. Why don't you come with us? Come meet us at next Tuesday at 6 o'clock. We're gonna discuss this. We're gonna get you together. But you can't be fooling back around with these suckers. They don't understand by giving glory and lifting up what they did, it actually works against you because I think all of us know the higher up you get into this successful thing, the higher up you get into this got your shit together thing in life, and you deal with people across the world or from different walks of life, you find out that even the people who came, who had the jacked up history and the jacked up life, eventually figured out that they had to kill that identity so that they can, lead a new life in, the successful walk. And that's the reality of it. That's how it works. But only in the movies, only in the as MOT would say, the cesspool does it fly. And so they don't really have anything else real, and the clock's working against them. They know they don't have anything real. So
Right.
that's how it works, man.
Yeah, all right. Let me go to actual factual since he joined the panel. I think he had a opposition to what we were saying.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
We can hear you, bro.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I got asked to call the panel because brother made a remark about well, the first remark was it was on the panel talking about the spending power thing. I basically highlighted how Professor Jared Ball basically debunked that whole theory or thing that had been touted for years about Black American spending power, and basically broke it down to how it really doesn't mean much because of the wealth. But I think all you guys are aware of that. Mike, I've heard you speak on it. I think I heard you speak on Sandy Darity just very briefly. So I think you are aware of it, but I just was bringing that back out. As far as the piece on one brother mentioned in the chat specifically about Nipsey Hussle, and my only concern, or my only thing to my response was that he was doing he was on the verge, or he was doing some important things, and I think I don't want to say I think, but my only concern is that yes, we can hold people accountable for their past actions or current actions, but I don't understand this need when I when I look over at channels like these. I don't understand this need to kind of continue to excoriate the individual. I get I get the point of kind of holding up as a cautionary tale to not look at it, I mean, to not follow it. But I don't understand it, especially when we're talking about the culture that allowed it to be popularized, and just being frank, namely hip hop, right? Namely hip hop. I'm sorry, brothers. I'm in the airport, so it's kind of loud. But
Just mute yourself when you're not speaking.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm like I said, I'm in the airport, so it's just, the intercom was going off and I'm listening, but I'm sorry about that. But that genre, I'm a millennial, just full disclosure. I am a millennial, so I'm 30. So just to give, full perspective. So my perspective may be different coming from boomer parents. But that culture was largely popularized it to a degree. Besides the blaxploitation period and other things like that, but the explosion of hip hop primarily did it. So it was my only thing is that when people are discussing it, that it's good to give a healthy amount, but I just want a full perspective of it to say, hey, even if you guys didn't, even if you gentlemen didn't, to say, hey, you know what, we supported it. And I'm talking about supported it with our money, with our time, sonically, we supported it. And that's where I'm at with it. Now, as far as my only thing is, I get a bit concerned when I see certain brothers or certain people in chats and things of that nature continue after the person has turned it around, after the person has talked down on their past behavior. I don't see how constructive that is. And that's just me.
Okay, I got a question.
Yeah, go ahead. MOT, go ahead.
What person have we went after they fully turned their life around, who's actually changed their actions? What person have we went after past that point?
Okay. The person who is in the screenshot, Nipsey Hussle. That person. I know that for sure.
Do you know why I put Nipsey Hussle in the thumbnail?
Mike, if I want to say I don't know. I'm going to say that. I'm going to say I don't know.
So the reason
I have an idea, but I don't know. Go ahead.
So the reason why I use Nipsey Hussle's thumbnail is because he gets praise for what he's doing, but there are thousands of other black men who are doing the same exact thing, and they don't get the same praise. In fact, they get excoriated for what they're doing. right?
Okay.
And because they don't have the sort of sexual stardom that, or the sexual currency that the women, the BWs seem to promote themselves. The women, see, the BWs know exactly what they're doing. They don't want to support, you know, the many BMs that we've covered on this live stream throughout this year and last year, who are doing 10 times as much as what this other person is doing. But this Nipsey Hussle gets all the credit in the world for what other BMs have already done. And yet, why don't you support those those same BMs for what they're doing? Oh, it's because he's who he's married to. You see what I'm saying? They know what they're doing is wrong. They know it, but they don't want to accept it because their worldview, by their measure, is to supersede ours and and to be superimposed upon us. And you're not supposed to challenge them. And they think they can build a society that way. And I'm saying, where's the example of that ever working?
Right.
Hey, Mike, I got
So,
a question for actual factual.
well, just to hold on, brother. Can I go ahead, brother? Go ahead with your question. I'm sorry. Go ahead with your question, brother.
Yeah, so my question is, how can somebody have a complete turnaround when they still reference and actually associate with the criminal element from which they came?
Nah, I
So
got
you still claim an affiliation to a particular street gang. Allegations swirl that you're still engaged in some of the criminal activity that preceded your illustrious entertainment career. So you haven't made a complete turnaround because you still reference this particular lifestyle for credibility as well. So
no,
in essence,
I agree.
promote it.
Hey Triz, I agree, man. As a Nipsey fan, I was even disappointed when I found out that he was mad about somebody snitching or something like that. I was like, I didn't understand. I was like, why do you even care? And trust me, bro, I know exactly where you come from, Triz.
I was about to piggyback off of Triz when I was about to make that point to use that to piggyback off of Super Triz as the fact that Nipsey Hussle was murdered because he accused a fellow gang member of being a so-called quote unquote snitch, you know, which shows that in a way he was 1 foot out and still 1 foot in the same lifestyle that, you know, people claim that he left. So, but I know this is a question that Triz was asking actual factors. So y'all go ahead.
Oh, okay. Just to respond, this is what I'll say to that. Yes, that is if the reports are the case and there was eyewitnesses there, he said that. Now I have my view of that, which is a little different. But this is what I'll say. To get back what Mike was saying, I can't, or Super Triz first. I can't excuse, or I can't excuse if that's the case. If he was active. But I'm the type of individual where if I see that you're making a turnaround and you're having power and you're influencing people, I step back. And there's no need for me to keep excoriating you. That's up to people in your circle. Now, to respond to what Mike was saying, I hear that. I hear what you're saying, Mike. There are other black men who are doing big things. That Byron Allen interview, which I've been following him for about a year or so now.
Yeah, but he's not to be promoted because of his spouse. Do you see the hypocrisy in the way how they think?
Now I was just about to get into that. Now, to get into that piece, and I'm a subscriber of MOT, by the way, because I think this is going down that lane. Mm-hmm. Listen, real world stuff, I don't have a record. So I'm a square brother, straight up and down.
Join the club, brother. Join the club.
Yeah, and I'm a subscriber of this channel. Real talk. So I don't, as far as that goes, I think the women piece, MOT's been talking about it at length, and he's been getting very specific. So I think as far as that goes, what can I say, man? As far as our women, bro, I don't even know, bro. just to be real with everybody on the panel on that end, I know what you're talking about, the women lionizing them. I didn't realize it, how bad the women were lionizing Nipsey until I seen some of the just general searches and Instagram and
Yeah, you can go
all
on
over.
Instagram and you see thousands upon thousands of BWs
Right,
in
right,
commemorance of this person, but the
right.
other brothers at Morehouse or any other HBCU, no, I don't care about them.
Okay,
Right.
can I cut and say something? We need to get rid of this term square. All right, we should not put a label on doing the right thing and on being law-abiding citizens. We should not put a label on that. See, that term is for these derelict, retarded, criminal-loving idiots. Leave it to them. We're
Yeah,
smart.
man. I mean,
so we have to get rid of that.
Like, we don't call dudes
Let's
trapezoid brothers because they
Right.
engage in crime. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? I know you're gonna like that.
It's just doing the right thing. We should not put a label on doing the right thing. To me, that term sickens me. It's sick.
I'm gonna tell you exactly why you can't call this certain square thing does not exist. Because take somebody like Chameleonaire and somebody like E40. These guys are heavily invested in Silicon Valley. Somebody like E40 has his own wine company, has his own vineyard. He owns the whole company from farming to bottling. Everybody else who partners, they partner. Nobody owns their own alcohol brand or whatnot. I wouldn't call those dudes square. But from what they've been doing with their investments and their involvement in certain things, is very square.
I mean, it's straight and narrow, right? So
Yeah.
so the identifier here is that the masculinity of these men is predicated on how much criminality is involved in proximity to their achievements. So the BM who goes out there and involves himself in that street aspect, he goes out there, he gets the Escalade, he gets the candy paint on it, he throws the spinning wheels on it, and no one ever requires him to give back restitution or redistribute his wealth or his earnings back through the neighborhood or back through the community itself.
Hey, Mike, let me tell you something. E40 don't even need to wear glasses. That's just his image. That you know what I'm saying? He said that's what he used. That's what he did use to throw people off.
Oh yeah.
You know that the term square is just as stupid as the phrase educated lame. I mean, these two things to me are very stupid. Why are we putting labels on doing what you're supposed to do? I mean,
normal behavior.
Say that again.
You said normal behavior.
Exactly. Why are we putting a label on normal behavior? You're supposed to be a law-abiding citizen. You're supposed to be as educated, as knowledgeable as you can. That's being normal. We put a label on being normal. This is a sick world we live in today. We're putting a label on being normal. Oh man.
Oh yeah. Or they call it being white, right?
Exactly. If you're articulate, you sound white. I never knew color had a sound.
Well, because we take, like I said at the beginning of the podcast, is that they've taken prison culture and have brought it, prison politics, and have brought it into into social media, where it's not applicable. It's just not applicable here. It's trying to fit a square peg through a round hole.
I mean, man, some of the people that I hired try to bring this shit into a work environment of a company they don't even fucking know. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's kind of like artificial kind of chia pet power, man. You know, you water that shit and it just grows, man. It's like it's not even real, man. So it's kind of like, we let these trapezoids just talk and just do whatever they want to do. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to bully everybody, man, and it's really not fair and just. And they see a sense of decency as something that should be stamped out immediately, and that's just not the way it works all the time, man.
Well, they're getting a response now from us, right? We're actually pushing back against this. 10 years ago, this, maybe a little over 10 years ago, that wouldn't have been the case, right? They would have had full control over the narrative in the social space. Now they have to share that social space with the Black Brain Trust and other, the Amanda Tomorrows, the Super Trizzes, and the King Sigmas and the Mr. Fantastics. You have to share that space now. And the thing is, we're not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere. We're not backing down from any of this, man. You can flag the videos all you want to.
Because they were truly the shrinking violets. The only thing that you had to do was just challenge their points.
Right.
I mean, look how quickly nobody wanted to be a select male after that tore that shit out the frame. Now nobody's talking about that shit anymore. I mean, it just goes to show you how weak these arguments are. All they do is stand behind broken women, in order to make their points, because they need this broken women in order to have everything that they want. Now once that power is rendered inert, the actual social viability kind of goes along with it. So what they try to do is they try to kind of reinstitute that in spaces where it works, and it's becoming less and less relevant everywhere they go. So they come online and they come in big groups and they join panels with other broken, unmedicated females, and they just talk a whole lot of nonsense, man. And the points are so right that they can't even come in spaces to defend themselves.
No, and they're actually losing space as by the week. You see them kind of scurrying away, going from foxhole to foxhole looking for cover. Let's go to Zorf Royalty. He got his hand up.
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
What's good, fam? Stop by, say, put some volume on the mic, please.
All right, no doubt. Can y'all hear me now?
We can hear you.
All the way.
I bet. So, so one thing I would like to talk about is something that Super Triz said, that going back to Nipsey Hussle, that Nipsey was still part of that life before he died. I mean, if you look at the music video Rap Niggas, he was hanging around with Crips in LA. He was hanging around with Crips in Brooklyn, and he never really gave up gangbanging. He never came out he never came out saying that he said, I'm not part of the criminal lifestyle no more. So there's that. But another thing is the reason why Nipsey Hussle is so well loved in the community. I mean, he did some positive, but the main thing is, in the Black community, we have this this gangster fairy tale where this, there was this hood nigga, he was selling drugs, he got into the streets, but then he turned his life around. Yeah, he turned his life around. He went legit. Like, we have this like fantasy of like, like, oh shit, like, yo, he was part of us. And then another reason why like other Black men, who do the right thing, who've done more than Nipsey did, don't get celebrated, is because they were not part of the mud. They were never really part of the struggle. Like they were not part of the streets. They don't know what the struggle is like. So we have this twisted mindset, like, oh, if you wasn't in the mud with us, if you wasn't in the streets, then nah, then you're not, you are a sellout, you're a coon. And then you add on top of this, who you marry, who you date, like the race of the woman that you're with. Then they completely say like, okay, this dude, he may be doing positive for the community, but he has a white wife or whatever. What he has done is not legitimatized. And the thing is, with the Byron Allen interview, I remember, it was like all over Instagram last week, and you should see the comments on those videos, bro. It was just crazy. It was crazy. You see these Black women saying like, oh, I saw one comment. It was so retarded. She said something like, oh, well, I know he's doing some positive, but is it true that he has a white wife? And then the comments just descended into utter chaos. So it's like our community takes it worries about the wrong things. Things are just meaningless. Like, okay, who this Black man is sleeping with? If he sleeps with a Black woman, okay, he's legit. But that's not enough. If he was in the mud, then he's even more legit. So it's like there's these stipulations in the community to say if you're real or not. It's so dumb. So with Nipsey, that's why he's lionized. He was a Crip. He was gang banging, getting to shootouts, fights, and all that. And he turned himself around, became pro-black, and then that's why he's lionized. But it's like a gangster fantasy, you know what I'm saying? And ultimately, the women, black women, they just want somebody like Nipsey. I call it DMX in a business suit. They want, a street nigga who has street sense, not afraid to fight, not afraid to get into criminal activity, but is very business savvy and is willing to provide. It's just stupid.
It's a Frankenstein, and what they're articulating again, the criminality aspect and the violence as components of Black masculinity, and then they're upset when people push back against it. They're the only ones I see think like this. I don't see, Palestinian women saying I only fuck with niggas from, the Gaza Strip because them other niggas in the West Bank, they don't get it popping like these other cats do. I mean, it's just so stupid, right?
That sounds
It's a
dumb as hell,
celebration.
bro.
Yeah.
It's actually a celebration of a certain level of Black dysfunction. And if you embrace some of this Black dysfunction, you have to be pro-Black to do that. And that, how that arose or where that came from, we could go into that ad infinitum. But at the end of the, for a long while. But at the end of the day, it comes down to embracing Black dysfunction, and we have to get away from that. A lot of guys who had embraced Black dysfunction then became, very functional. They later on have grown up to, when I say grow up or evolve, to not embrace Black dysfunction and to speak, and some will speak out against it. And you see some ex-gang members and that kind of thing who are supposed to be in the communities that you don't really hear about, some who are doing some good work, who are speaking against a lot of this dysfunctional stuff and how to move away from this and how to kind of improve your life and not embrace this as a badge of honor. Going to jail, going to the penitentiary in some ways in the community is looked upon as a positive, like it's a good thing. Oh man, that's a badge of honor. No, it's not. It's not a badge of honor. No. Going to penitentiary means you were fucking up. That wasn't a good thing. And we have to get away from embracing some of this dysfunction, and then adding that on to being pro-Black, which is a ridiculous notion. But that's some of what we are dealing with, and that's part of our issue. Certainly the drug culture and all that brought a lot of that about. But we have to move away from a lot of that, and I think that's what I hear a lot of you guys saying. Some of these guys have not stepped away from talking about, like Nipsey Hussle, he didn't really reject it. He didn't say, well, I reject the gang life, the gangster life. You should be rejecting that. You should be out there speaking against that, and showing where that's not a positive road to be on. That's not a winning formula for us. It never was.
And they always want to point. They always want to point to Jay-Z, right? Jay-Z, he came from Marcy, and now he's $1 billion mogul. Well, they always try to take the exception and make that the rule. And it's like, wait a second, dude. How much has he really done for Marcy, though? Right?
None.
Yeah,
That whole neighborhood's gentrified, bro. That whole neighborhood's gentrified.
Yeah, Bedford-Stuyvesant is gentrified. Yeah, I believe, in my opinion, that certain projects in that area, including Marcy projects, is going to end up turning into co-op housing, upscale co-op housing, like the city did to a lot of former housing projects. And maybe a piece of Marcy houses would be, I guess, a memorial, a monument.
Right.
Going back, Mike, you made a point earlier. You stated something like, maybe not verbatim, but it seemed to me something you said about a decade ago when these BWs would make these types of narratives, how there was not a lot of pushback. Well, I'll tell you this, for a person who was a content creator in so-called Black YouTube about a decade ago, that there was a few people tried to make this narrative, and people like myself, Soul and Black, even Sergeant Willie Pete, and others, we pushed back and made sure these types of narratives had no life in them. We destroyed these types of, thug loving or thug enabling, Pookie and Ray Ray enabling narratives. We destroyed that.
But I want to before I go to Cyberdyne, I think a couple people got their hands up. This recent interview on the Breakfast Club with Gilly the Kid and Wallow explains in the first 5 minutes why he got into the criminal lifestyle at a young age. He said it's because I saw the women chasing those types of men in Philly.
Yep. Yeah, I saw that
And
interview too.
it cost him 20 years of his life. It's so it's ridiculous that people can even bring this up and say, well, why do y'all harp on these type of dudes? He's on the Breakfast Club explaining that this is not the sort of perspective that black men need to be taken, that BM should be taken. But if we say it, we're the bad guys. But if he says it, he's a spokesperson, he's a hero for the hood. It's so stupid, man. You know, we get a
They'll call
thumbs.
you corny.
You get a thumbs down on your live stream for saying it. But if he says it, you know, it's credible enough. It's dumb, man.
Yeah, because the reason is because you're from the outside looking in. It's like, yo, like, what do you know about this? So Wallow, he was part of the mud. Like he did all that street shit. And he you know he refrained from it. He was like, yo, I don't want to do this no more. His words have more value than us. That that was not part of the criminal lifestyle. It's a legitimacy thing, but yeah, it's kind of stupid. We're saying the same message anyway. I don't know. It's just fucking dumb.
Yeah,
Yo,
shout out to Information Man Show, man. The reason why the Black Brain Trust has a logo is because of Information Man Show, man. He whipped up a logo for us without us even asking and delivered it to us one day, man. I woke up and saw that in the email, man. So shout out to Information Man Show for doing that for the Black Brain Trust, man. Much respect. Who was just talking?
Hey, to what you were saying about them pointing out Jay-Z all the time, right?
Yeah.
You got Birdman and his brother Slim, right? They had a oil exploration company, bro, and they was doing numbers with it. You know what I'm saying? And you got people like them. You got Master P. He can't tell you that he's buying cellular airspace at the time, way before a lot of people. But he have to give it to you in the movie like I got the hookup. You know what I'm saying? Like you just because if he had to break down the technicals of it, that would be square.
Right.
And Birdman and them, they never they wouldn't get far promoting or the oil exploration. You know what I'm saying? Like when you see somebody like Nipsey Hussle, that is a whole marketing campaign put behind the stuff that he's doing.
Explain the marketing campaign aspect for those who don't understand what you're talking about.
Okay, the marketing campaign works like this, right? So you go on the promo run, you got to have things to talk about besides the album and stuff. So they documented everything along the way as like it's part of his branding, and that's that, and people, people don't have that. A lot of the guys that's doing the same things, they don't have that.
Oh,
you know
okay. I see what you're saying. Is that from rags to riches, sort of?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like Jay-Z, like they don't have these marketing campaigns. If I was to just take a whole bunch of money and just invest it into the black community, no, the next state over wouldn't even know about it.
Well, they'll know about it based on who's sleeping in your bed. Let me go to Cyber9, man. He had his hand up, and then we'll go to Nagone.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
You know, I kind of disagree a little bit.
With
you, that it's the whole it's us versus them, or we don't have that perspective. You know, at the end of the day, fellas, it's ultimately it's because it's what they want. It's what they want to do. You know, how many of us have had that childhood where you had a group of your buddies or a group of kids that you used to wanted to hang out with, and they wanted to go like real far from the house or go do something that you knew would potentially get you in trouble, but it was fun to do if you did it, and you decide that you wasn't going to do it, and then you might have did it one other time, and then a couple other times you was like, nah, man, I had my thrill. I ain't going down there because I ain't trying to get in trouble for real. And you was cool with them. They was cool, but they just kind of didn't play with you no more. They didn't come knock on the door no more. They didn't play games with you no more. They eventually separated themselves from you. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of that ordeal. And I really can't jive with the and I ain't against the brother that said it, but I really can't jive with the aspect of that, with the perspective of that. Um, it's like, well, I didn't come from the mud. And the reason I can't jive with that because I have to point to guys who grew up in the same situation and end up becoming millionaires, multimillionaires, and billionaires. And they came from the exact same environment and they did not subscribe to the foolishness. So it's like, it's like, well, if because if people praise Nipsey and like you said, that Gilly the Kid Cat, if they're gonna hear it coming from them, it's because, well, that's who they want to hear it from. Women are only going to be interested in their position of advantage. And as long as they feel like they're getting something emotional that makes them feel good out of the deal, they're going to always roll with that. Otherwise, it costs, like the guy that just mentioned Birdman and them, they could get very far if they mentioned they had oil exploration companies and cellular exploration companies with people who are actual clients and customers interested in buying that. They don't. I mean, I'll be honest. I don't have to get a black community shit that I don't want to give them. It's about, well, I'm gonna become global, and that's something that Byron has said. Don't look at me as a black player. Look at me as a global player. If the community wants to have all these type of conditions, which really, I mean, in my eyes, those conditions are irrelevant. Why? Because it's guys that look just like us who came out of the same situation. It's just one person chose to do something to get the adulation and popularity of people who was dumb enough to make him feel good or give him credit for doing stupid shit and lift him up on the pedestal versus the other dude who didn't do none of that crap, still made it, but people was like, we don't necessarily like the way you made it and we don't want to give credit to that just because we don't want to. They don't have a real true basis why they don't want to. They know whatever those guys that made it, become billionaires and millionaires, they know that was real shit. They really had to hustle. They really had to work for that. But people who don't want to give credit where credit is due simply choose not to give credit where credit is due. You know what I'm saying? So it ain't about, well, we don't have that perspective. Bullshit. We do. If you grew up in project housing, you got that same perspective. The difference is either you did something stupid and you turned from it, or you didn't do something stupid and you going straight. So it is what it is, man.
Yeah, definitely. Let's go to Going 11. He got his hand up.
No. I had spoken before. I had my hand up earlier. I had spoken before, but yeah, I think all good points made. What this brother just said here a second ago, excellent point. People did make good choices, and others did make poor ones. But I think the narrative has got to change. We can't look upon some of this stuff as it being acceptable, and people walking around saying, "Yeah, some of your businessmen are drug dealers in your community." We just that kind of talk has to just be that's got to come to an end. You know what I mean? We've got to end that. Byron Allen really talking real deal stuff. People talking about black, his white wife and all. But here's some of the biggest blockers who are trying to stop you from really coming off in this black media, who believe in a black integrity, a black power, a black media. All right. Here you have some of the blackest folks who claim that they're blackity black, and these are some of your biggest blockers who are getting paid by the system to keep you off the field.
Yeah.
I mean, and Byron Allen, he with his white wife trying to keep you on the field. I mean, not only on the field, but in the game. And it's amazing. It's amazing how this gets shifted around because people are don't have the proper information as far as I'm concerned, or the proper outlook on this. I'll just leave it at that.
Let's go to Johnny Blaze. He got his hand up. What's going on, Jay Blaze?
Hey, good evening, fellas. Can you hear me?
I'm chilling, fam. Go ahead.
Hey, I just want to make 2 quick points. The first one was when I hear all this talk about what these guys are trying to do, and I'm going to kind of relate this to a business aspect. It's like they're trying to sell you a bad stock to a company that's about to go bankrupt.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, keep buying the stock. The hustle culture. This is our company. It's gonna make millions. Yeah. But my second point is to the guy, actual factual. I know he's off the channel, but he kept asking why, do we keep using the repetitive nature? And as an educator, one of the things that we have to do in education is we have to repeat the narrative in order for it to stick in. And this is what the other side is doing. They are using that whole repetitive nature. You hear it in hip hop, you hear it in the mainstream media. So in order for the Black Brain Trust and other people like us to go forward, we have to use that same kind of repetitive nature. You need to hear this message in order for it to sink in, because if not, it's going to get washed over. And I'll meet up on that.
Thanks for the contribution. Let's go to Man Tomorrow. Got his hand up.
This is why I suggest we separate the thinking black man's image away from the black community image, because the black community image is all about hyping up things that don't do anything for our actual image at all. And we need to just formulate our own image and our own stuff that's not associated, especially with what most of these women want. Because if we keep doing that, we're never going to be able to differentiate where men should stand. Because the guy who was sitting there, I mean, if there was a black brain trust like 20 some years ago, he would have looked at that and women associated with that and be like, look, I ain't got to do that and lose 20 years of my life. And this is the most important thing we got to do, is separate the two, so that way we can give people a choice on whether or not they want to join this or join that. Because right now, black men, the only thing we could do is just please black women by doing a whole bunch of ridiculous nonsense. That's our image, doing stupid stuff to please them. Breaks through the nail salon type stupidity, and that's what they like. So it's not like they have worked to actually not associate that with black male image. I mean, the so-called quiet ones too. They've benefited from the same system that the Ratchets have benefited from, the same exact system. That's why I say we have to separate our image from these people, man, because at the end of the day, we're being seen just like these people, believe it or not. So that's all I got.
Who else is next? Let's go to Wacky Water O.
Yeah. Okay, I want to address 2 points. One point I'd like to address is this narrative where people use Jay-Z as an example of this reformed gangster, trying to use it to justify their love of gangsterism and what have you. When you listen to Jay-Z's last album that he made, 444, he actually condemns his former life. He condemns his former way of thinking. There's a song he made where, in the lyrics, he stated how his mindset was when it comes to purchase a specific material and how his mindset is now. And he continued these comparisons, thus condemning his prior lifestyle and his mindset he had in his past, knowing that the mindset he had when he was younger was mixed with a level of ignorance. So he's actually, in a way, condemning this quote unquote Pookie and Ray Ray like mentality and activities. So when people try to utilize him as an example to justify their enabling of thug culture, I'm like, okay, I look at them as people who have not paid attention to his prior album, And another point I like to make is I was watching a video from somebody, and he was speaking about how in order for a man to get respect from a female, they have to put on a quote unquote masculine frame. And then he used a gangster or, so-called Pookie and Ray Ray in the street, stating that he has a quote unquote masculine frame. That's why females respect him. And I'm just stunned at how stupid that narrative is. I'm like, dude, I thought you were smarter than that. because like you guys was pointing out, we live in a community where people are utilizing criminal activity as a form of masculinity to market to black men or black boys. And no, listen, the way these females, and I'm not trying to, change the topic to females, but just to destroy that narrative of a masculine frame, these females are socialized in this society to not respect you, no matter how quote unquote masculine your frame is. Okay. And a lot of these, street corner guys do not have a masculine frame. I don't know what the hell that is. What's a masculine frame? Well, when you act like a big buffoon, when you try to go and act like you're the toughest SOB in the street because you have a concealed weapon, what's the masculine frame? When you're loud, when you're walking around half naked with your shirt off, like a homosexual in front of a group of men, what's a masculine frame? that is dumb. And this is more of these narratives that enable criminal behavior and try to normalize it and market it to young so-called black boys. That's why it's necessary for people like us to continue to destroy these narratives, because it makes me sick.
Good points, man. I think the masculine frame that they're trying to identify is always some form of cosplay. We talked about this the other day, that there's a lot of cosplay going on in the community. The tattoos, like you said, the wifey beater, the snapbacks and the J's and stuff like that. I don't have a problem with what people spend their money on. I just think that when you try to use that as components of masculinity, we fall flat in the greater society in our way to compete through a system of meritocracy. Those are not factors of meritocracy at all. And I think that's where a lot of frustration is coming from brother thinking BMs, because you're promoting these these features as if they're something of merit, and they're not. And when it comes down to these fourth industrialized society where BMs have to compete, and they show up with J's and tattoos and silk screen t-shirts, man, you start to question, what is your purpose here? Because China is ramping up, and I mention nation states because they're homogenous. They're looking out for their best interests, and you're presenting to me this sort of street resume that has no application in the real world. Let me go to Zororsi.
Yeah, Mike. What you said is 100% true. Like, because with all this, getting the tattoos, do rag, what I'm saying, the Tims or whatever. In the grand scheme of things, all this, all this don't even matter, and that's the reason why, in 2053, total black wealth is going to be zero, because we're wasting so much time trying to. A lot of brothers are trying to press these females, trying to be who's more, who's tougher, who is more hard or whatever. And it's like, for what? For what? Because it's not making a community advance any further. At the end of the day, other communities, and look at the Hispanic community. Yeah, they got a criminal element within them. However, they're still advancing farther than us. And we're going to be at the bottom of the bottom. And for what? Just trying to press some ratchet ass broads who think that, who want a DMX in a business suit, which isn't real. So yeah, man, this doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. Do you think the Chinese are looking, when they look at Black American culture, they're like, oh snap, like this is America's like secret weapon. No, they probably just like, oh look, it's the African Americans, and they're just fooling around or whatever. So it doesn't really matter the grand scheme of things. And another point that I would like to make is regarding the Sabadan, like Sabadan made a very good point too, that there's some other brothers who came from them that that made themselves better. I mean, Sabadan, I remember, I forgot what podcast was it. He explained his whole story, and his whole story like was really really dope. A brother who came, he did time, he came back and he turned his whole life around. Like there is brothers who do that, and that is very very true. However, those brothers never get celebrated. They never get, they never get promoted. And I guess the reason is a lot of those brothers who come from the hood, they leave the hood because they see success. They're like, I don't want to go back, and they have a personality like they want to stay very very low key. But like we need to promote those type of brothers. Say, listen, you don't have to play basketball, play football, be a rapper, try to be a drug dealer to make it out there to the hood. Because this idea is pervasive, whether it's from New York all the way to LA, from Chicago to Dallas. It's this mentality is plaguing all our neighborhoods, that if you're a black man in the hood, you either could be a dope dealer, rapper, or play ball. No, that cannot that cannot be the standard, and that's the biggest problem, and that's the reason why we are at the bottom of the bottom. If we could be real, yes, there's some white supremacy at play, but at the end of the day, you see it everywhere. A lot of black boys are just trying to be rappers. That's why there's so many. Like I told my brother the other day, it's too many damn rappers. So many of these young boys who are like between ages 17 to like 27 trying to be rappers or trying to be drug dealers or whatever. It's crazy. It's crazy. So we have to push this narrative like, listen, there's another way out. But the problem is the machine is kind of like drowning us out. And you see it in Instagram, especially Instagram. I have to say Instagram and Twitter are the two biggest social media websites pushing this intellectual pookie propaganda a talking point.
Yeah, they love to hybridize, the BM. They love to hybridize them, this sort of, he gets 60 miles to the gallon, but he's also, he has the brute force of a Ford Raptor. It's just it's so ridiculous. If you really think about the cosplay aspect to it, BWs also emulate this same sort of cosplay themselves, where they put the blonde wigs on and the bleaching of the skin and the blue eye contacts and stuff like that, trying to hybridize themselves to make themselves seem, more exotic. If you look at their dating profiles on like Match.com and, black people meet, you'll see all these. Yeah, you'll see their profile always articulates themselves as being not 100% ADOS. It's always mixed with Irish and all these other, they're 50% of this and 50% of that. It's like, who are you? Like at the end of the day, who are you, man? Let me check some of these comments real quick, man, because I see a little bit of tomatoes being thrown here. Bullet Tooth Tone says other races of criminal elements are organized. Ours is not. I don't think we should have a organized criminal element. I don't see the value in that. At least in the context of this discussion.
I mean, exactly. And you always see that talking point too. I remember I was watching a video on YouTube. Yeah, there's a show in New York with this guy from Queens Flip or whatever. He interviews like, these ex New York Bloods or whatever. And he interviewed like these former Latin kings who themselves are, talking about don't be part of that life. No, they're telling their own communities not to be part of it. And you should see the comments of black people say, oh, why couldn't the Bloods be organized like the Latin Kings? The Latin Kings were like the mafia or whatever. But it's like, well, for what? Like, no, no, just don't be criminal at all. Like, why you gotta say that? Oh, we should be like the mafia. We should be like, the cartels, or we should be like, like the Latin Kings or whatever. No, just don't.
Yeah. There's always this sort of romanticizing of organized criminalization. Andre Edwards in the chat says y'all are mad about what chicks you don't want think about you. Shit is crazy. But you know, I expect comments like this because one, they're not paying attention to the live stream, right? And two, we dropped a link, but they won't never pull up. So
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I want Andre Edwards to click on the link and pull up and explain what he means, man. Don't be a coward. Come on through. Come on, Andre. Because I'm assuming that he's making an indirect hit towards me, because in my last statement I mentioned females a little bit, and he made that assumption. That's what I believe, and if that's true, then I want him to come click the link and express what he means with that statement, because that just don't be a coward, man. Come on through.
I mean, but what I don't get is when, like, okay, here's the easy part. We set the conversation up so you can deliberately look like a goddamn fool for coming against actual masculine thought. You just don't understand how feminine you come off whenever you be like, hey man, they just don't care about what women think. Hey man, I'm like, dude, it's so stupid. And this is the reason why they can't come out and actually defend their points, because they're just like the women who they're actually trying to cover for. That's the deal. That's the issue. And in other societies and cultures, neither one of these entities would exist. And these two entities work together to keep this chaos going forever. Neither one of these people should be allowed to procreate. They shouldn't even be allowed to come together as people. But that's what you're dealing with, man. You're dealing with 40 years of these people being able to run the gamut while pretending to be community minded. And the moment we try to come fix stuff, well, man, you're just not accepted by women. I'm like, dude, who cares about those women? And then all of a sudden they ain't got no point. But they thought that made just such a good point. I'm like, oh.
They're flailing. They're flailing. They're flailing like crazy, and they're throwing anything they possibly can, whether it's bar stools or benches and trash cans and Molotov cocktail bombs. And the next step they'll call you a pedo, for not agreeing with them, because that's their way of engaging other BMs while at the same time claiming to be pro something, right? Or they're always pro something. I'm surprised they don't. Yeah, go ahead.
And there,
Can I piggyback off of what MOT said?
Yeah.
Well, here's the issue. We're not exactly upset about women deciding, who to pursue sexual interest with, because most of us here, we've already made our decisions. So the women that have errant behaviors, we're not necessarily interested in anyway.
When we talk about,
excuse me,
I think that's his point.
Yeah. So we're not really interested in the women with errant behavior anyway. So it's not like we're upset necessarily at their decision. We're upset at the outcomes of their decisions, and how it affects the community at large, as well as the image of the Black male on a global perspective, from a global perspective. So a lot of us are engaged in commerce, and we interface with society at large. And so because of these negative stigmas and negative imagery associated with Black males, it makes our business dealings that much more difficult. And so that's really our issue, in the fact that, we talk about like outcomes, and one of the outcomes is the actual community. And we talk about gentrification. That there was somebody mentioned gentrification earlier when referencing Jay-Z, and part of the issue is that most Americans generate wealth through real estate. So with that in consideration, real estate being a primary driver for wealth creation, and also wealth aggregation, it's something that you should take very seriously. So if you live in an environment where real estate values and real estate appreciation are depressed, due to the lack of a sense of community, then your primary objective is to get out of that environment and invest somewhere else where you can actually see an appreciation in property values. Because if I'm paying, we'll just say, if I pay $100,000 for a property, and that property in the quote unquote ADOS neighborhood appreciates 7% in 10 years, versus me taking that same 100,000 and investing in a non-ADOS community and seeing an appreciation of say 45% in 10 years, it's absolutely positively a no-brainer. And so then when we look at the reasons why the property value is depressed, we can point to products of poor decision makers by BWs, who they procreate with, and the products of those conceptions contribute to the depressed property values and depressed appreciation in the neighborhoods you're trying to escape. So then when we look at individuals who we seek to praise because of their transformations that's occurred in their lifespans, well, we actually have to look at the toll they've taken on the community and individuals within the community, how they've actually paid. Again, when I talk about the collection plate being passed multiple times, now you're paying through negative appreciation. So now that your property could have been worth $145,000 after 10 years, but now it's only worth $107,000. So now you take that and now you're at you're at a net loss. You're at a net loss of $37,000, give or take, because the property value didn't appreciate the way you expected to, or $38,000. The property value didn't appreciate the way you expected it to, because of a criminal element and just a poor imagery of the neighborhood. So now you actually lost that money. That's the money. That's what that's the cost of that particular individual's lifestyle that you praise. So now you're saying, oh, well, he's giving back to the community. Look what he's done. Well, look at the cost to everybody. So you take that $37,000, give or take, and you multiply it by everybody in that neighborhood. That's how much that person is cost. So unless what they've done for the community offsets that cost to every individual in that particular neighborhood, then they've done nothing. That's the reason why we consistently go back and say, well, what has this person done? And you say, well, we've already discussed this individual, and why do we keep harping on the person? Well, because they haven't paid back. We still waiting on restitution.
Mm-hmm. Facts. That is super true.
Yep. It's just like when they say dumb statements like that, they'll be like, oh yeah, they're gonna get so mad that they're not gonna know what to say or do next until we actually do. Like, it's so sad, man. And guess what? We need to keep talking about it until it's very firm that these people are not to be listened to, period, and that they're nothing but cowards, because they'll never come on and actually explain their point of view. That's all I got.
Yeah, Shine Bones in the chat says the whole concept of this stream is what type of black men do black women respect. It has nothing to do with the stream. I'm not sure where that comment is even coming from.
Again, our productivity is not contingent on a reverence
black woman's respect.
It's not contingent because we made the conscious decision to be productive regardless, and we'll take our productivity to whatever community respects it. Like I look at I'm here in Seattle, very small percentage of ADOS BMs, ADOS BMs or BWs at all, right? I intentionally purchase property in an area that is not heavily populated by ADOS individuals for a specific reason, because I'm tying up wealth in this property. This is business. It's not personal. Like why would I take my money and invest back into a community where it has a lower rate of return?
That doesn't make any sense.
Mhm.
Who does that benefit by doing that?
Mhm.
And so then you have individuals who get upset over the concept of gentrification.
Mhm.
Well, because when we come in the neighborhood and we buy property, it's not respected. But see, when other groups come into the neighborhood and they buy property, those people are left alone. They can walk up and down the street, walking their dogs and all times of the night. They're not harassed. But if I do that, I gotta walk around with the toast on the hip. Like I gotta be ready for war. Like it's like they're total. Other groups are totally left alone. That's the reason why they can gentrify. They can come back in the neighborhood and they can buy property, and then you give steps to the side, like they walk in opposite direction on the sidewalk. They'll step into the curb. ADOS people will step into the street to let them walk past, but let somebody else that looks like you walk past. You're gonna intentionally bump shoulders and try to start an altercation with them. So that's the reason why we look at it's like these arguments. You could tell the arguments are coming from people who have no interest in wealth creation because they're not thinking along those lines. Right. They're not thinking along the lines of what's the best way that I can get a return on my investment. What's the best way I can set myself and my lineage up in the future? They're not thinking along them lines.
Let me go to Cyberdon, and then we'll go to Thai City.
Much respect, Trez, but you know what? If I can't get a return on my money, it's personal. I don't care where it's at. There's no boardroom. There's no boardrooms out here. There's no members of the board of trustees. If you can't get a return on your money, that's personal. Or if it isn't personal, it's gonna turn personal real quick. If you can't keep those lights on, or when you can't put food on the table. I'm just speaking. My thing is this. I don't, a lot of to the guys and people in the chat, they always say, well, this is we want attention to black women or the attention of a negative crowd. To be honest, I don't want nobody from that crowd cheering for me. As guys like you all, similar interests, similar mind, going through the same thing. If I want to have a seat at the table where the food is, where the grass is green, where the pastures look a little bit different, and the air is a little bit cleaner, I want the people who live in that ecosystem to be cheering for me. I think the biggest thing is that when you are chasing life change and you're chasing success and everything that come along with that, and some people, they still want to hear cheers from the crowd who has nothing in common with the direction of where you're going. I think that's a big mistake, and to some degree it's ignorance. I don't want to hear guys cheering for me if they're not going in the same direction where I'm going from, and that's the reality. They're not going to cheer for you. So I mean, as I said all the time, I go into a lot of places, a lot of spots. I go in, I look different, I smell different, depends on how I'm dressed, but they can tell I'm different by the look in my eye. They can tell I'm different by the look on my face, my expression, my demeanor, the way I carry myself, and that I'm no longer on the bullshit, or I don't subscribe to the bullshit, even though I know all about it. So they're not gonna cheer for you. But at the same token, women, like I say, I don't pay them no attention. Guys in the Raptors, I don't pay them guys no attention either, because at the end of the day, accreditation isn't gonna do anything for you that you're supposed to do for yourself when you're supposed to be held accountable to get some type of result. So like man, MOT say, cut them off. That's the best thing that you can do. That's the best thing that anyone will ever do. And have people who are already where you're trying to go cheering for you, instead of expecting somebody else from the opposing team to be cheering for you. It's just not gonna work out, man.
Let me advance this person to the panel. Reigning Woman joined the panel. Reigning Woman, do you have anything you want to add? Okay, Rainy Woman's not here right now. Let me further expound on the context here, because some people who are coming in are basically trying to say that they're making this about gender. And they're making it about gender. What has happened here is that some BMs think in order to engage the Black Brain Trust, they have to mention their street cred. And what these individuals don't understand is that your street cred means nothing outside of that environment that you seem to wallow in. No one cares how many bodies you caught, or how many blickies you done bust, and how many shootouts you got into, how many people you may have knocked out in your time. That means nothing. All the Pyrex pots you had, how many late nights you stayed up in the trap. Nobody cares about that, man. That has no credibility over here.
Hey, Mike.
Yes, sir.
Let me tell you something, man. When I caught them charges and I came back home to Texas, man, I sat down. The guy gave me the job, right? And the next day I came in and he looked me dead in my face. And he said, man, why are you saying these? Why would you say that? Why would you say you have felonies when you don't? Because it didn't transfer from the Commonwealth state.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting there, I'm telling him, I'm like, man, I do. I really do. He was like, there's no need for you to be telling people that. And I was sitting there and I didn't get it.
Don't ask, don't tell.
But you know what? I'm being honest. And he thinking that I'm trying to be something that I'm not. You know what I'm saying? And he's sitting there telling me, asking me, like, literally, like, why are you even saying that? Why would you make something up? You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not making this up.
Well, it costs them money to actually investigate that type of stuff.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The background check came back clean, and he couldn't understand why I was saying that. I'm like, man, I wouldn't tell you if I didn't know. You know what I'm saying? Like, I wouldn't tell you. I'm not proud of it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Mike, I have a slight disagreement with you. When you said that, when people reference their criminal past, that, you don't care. Well, actually, I do, because that's how much you owe me. Because all that destruction that you've done. Real talk. Like, no, MOT, you laughing, but you pay for his public defender.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Mike, you don't care, but you pay for his room and board in a correctional institution. You see what I'm saying? You pay for his work release program, Thai City.
See, but
so
I want to
we
make sure.
Care.
Yeah, but I want to make sure I separate political prisoners away from the habitual criminals. Political prisoners who stood out there post civil rights, during civil rights, for the advancement of Black people are different than those who decided that they were going to kick someone's door in and take what was stashed in the couch and what was stashed in the wall and beneath the mattress. That's different. There's a lot of people who are trying to conflate. Well, the Black Panthers, they had guns. Well, this person is Stokely Carmichael and this person and that person. It's like, nah, man, that's not the same, man. Don't try to conflate the two. So there's a lot of people who are trying to push that aspect, and it's like, nah, man, I'm not seeing the relevance of your street resume in regards to this fourth industrialized society that's upon us. I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing the credibility there. You say you sat down with city council members. Good for you. I don't believe it. You need more people, but good for you, man. I'm not seeing it demonstrated on their panels or on their channels. They say they do this and they do that. I'm not seeing it, man. I'm not seeing it. But they feel the need to tell us that, right? They feel the need to tell Mike V that because they want to show how relevant they are in proximity to the Black Brain Trust as a channel. And it's like, nah, man, you can check the catalog, man. The last 100 videos or the last 100 live streams we've done demonstrates exactly where our mindset is. I go through the last dozen live streams you've done, and I see you going back and forth with Tommy Sotomayor. I see you going back and forth with this person and that person, and I'm not seeing it. He said two
You
hots
know,
in the cot. It's three hots in the cot now.
you know, Mike, it's interesting. I actually had a one-on-one with that person, and I find it interesting that that person didn't mention
Mhm.
conversation. Actually, they took the content down, and I wish I would have recorded it. But I asked that person, I say, you know, what are you here for? What are you here to do? Are you here for entertainment? Is what your platform is entertainment, or is your platform for edification, uplifting, and information?
Mhm.
Or are you just here to make money? I asked him that, and there was some witnesses there. I'm in the World Trade Center down here by the train, so forgive me to hear echo, but catch this train home. But that person basically told me that at first, you know, my platform was about information and education, and the person admitted on live in front of the world that, well, because information and edification isn't what's bringing numbers for him, he literally said, so now what I'm going to do is it's no longer about information, education, and teaching. I'm here to get paid. So, yes, I am here for the money. I'm here to get paid. That's what it's about. It's about the money. It's not about education.
Mhm.
It's not about information or edification. For me, I'm here. I'm trying to get the money. So, hearing that you said that that individual said that on that other panel, like I said, I had a more than a 2 hour sit down, person to person online, talking to him, and I brought it to him and asked him these stinging questions that you can't run from. They sting your soul, and that's what that person said. So, you know, very disingenuous, but then again, based on what I was told on a first hand basis from that person, it makes sense to me why that person was over there on that other panel engaging and saying the things that you just recounted that he said, because that person's about the money. So that's why he's trying to go offline, going off YouTube, trying to get some money. That's what they're about. They literally told me 1000%. They are about the money, flat out, period. I'm gonna mute up.
Mhm. I see Johnny Blaze got his hand up. Go ahead.
Hey, I just want to say I wholeheartedly agree with Cyberdyne. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yep.
I was gonna say I wholeheartedly agree with Cyberdyne. Right now, what we're doing, we're cutting into that daggone money.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, by putting this message out here, it counters what these guys are talking about. You cutting into their money. They don't like that. You're affecting them pockets. At the end of the day, they don't. This is not about community. This is about getting paid. It
Mhm.
always has been. It always will be. And they want to get paid in dollars, and they want to get paid in female currency. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah,
I mean,
sexual grounding.
if they were such street dudes, shouldn't they be making so much money in the street that they would not have to need any money from social media? I mean, how much money could you get from these PayPal donations and these Patreons? It's not that much.
Well, actually, it is much. There's a lot of people who do make a couple of, couple of stacks a month off of that, man. That's actually a pretty good wage when you really factor that in. But you got to keep that stuff up, though, right?
But
At
Mike,
some
that's not.
point, yeah.
Oh, sorry to interrupt, but Mike, that's not a. I don't think there's a large amount of people that's making a couple of stacks per month. I don't think it's a
The,
large group of people.
well, the Manosphere moves 6 figures every month as a collective. You can kind of look at the numbers. some of these analytics, these Google Analytics and YouTube Analytics, they're moving 6 figures every month. So somebody's getting paid off of this. I'm not knocking anybody who is getting paid. I'm just saying somebody is turning is having a higher earning. But Marquise Brownlee, he does 90 grand a month himself. So I know there's money in the not in the ministry, but in social media. But to their talking points, no, I don't think that most of these ones who do claim that they're doing it for the money, they're not really making that much. This is like the new panhandling, man. The guy who sells the incense and sells the oils and stuff like that, and the African beads and stuff like that, man. He set his table up, and for all intents and purposes, man, business is good, when it's warm out, but when it starts to get cold out, man, that the traffic dies down. I think what's happening now is that there's a there is a shift, a tectonic shift in discussion, in thought amongst BMs that is starting to cut into the profits of those who set up their little panhandling tables. Not our fault. Well, I don't want to say it's not our fault, but these guys set up their tables to be, or set up their channels to be non-scalable. You have a lot of subscribers and you have a lot of viewers, but at the end of the day, they walk away with nothing. And whatever money you were getting, it's short-lived for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is that the Dago changes are being thrown out the temple, and they don't know what to do once they're outside of the temple. So they're outside in the parking lot trying to figure out where to go next. So, like you said, it's non-scalable. So this is the end of the line. I mean, they couldn't really walk around their burned down communities with their Days of Future Past, street cred. So now they come to YouTube to try to superimpose on broken people, and that's not working. So I'm not sure where they're gonna go next. So
no. I know some people may have a problem with me saying the term scalability. When I mention the term scalability, I'm saying that in reference to what is the elasticity of their ideals or their ideology. Where does it go beyond where it starts from? It really doesn't. It's really flat, right? It doesn't. It plateaus out after 1 or 2 events, and then that's it. Whereas if you look at the brain trust, you will see that from its inception to today, you will see how many spikes or how many spikes it has, how many candlesticks are even there from a metric standpoint. It used to have just 3 live streams a week, then it went to almost 6 live streams in a week. So you see the scalability where we had to curate the content to address a wider demographic. They couldn't do that on the other side. They could never do that. They had to stick to whatever it was that they were doing and stir up new beef, because that's the extent of their content. Let me go to Johnny Blaze.
No, I'm actually glad you mentioned that new beef thing, because this YouTube dysfunction, this is the new street drug. Basically, they want everybody hooked on this stuff now. And the more they get you hooked, the more you keep coming back. So right now, YouTube dysfunction is the new drug of choice.
Let's go to Zoro Royalty.
Yeah, the Negro Manosphere is, I mean, for the most part, it represents the Black community that, fuckery sells, fuckery sells. So, any drama, any fuckery, any, new beefs that happen, it sells, it gets views, more people on the live stream. And then whoever's, doing the live streams, they're saying, all right, send me some super chats, subscribe to my Patreon and all that. And I think the difference between them and the Black Brain Trust is that for the most part, all of us are professional brothers. You know what I'm saying? We don't need YouTube. Like Mike, you probably for you, Mike, the Black Brain Trust is like a hobby for you. Basically, it's like a hobby for you. You don't need this for your income at all. Meanwhile, on the other side, for those guys, they're struggling. They need, you know, they need that YouTube money. They need that Patreon money. So the best way to keep that money flowing is always stirring the pot, you know, rehashing old talking points, you know, starting new beefs, you know, acting wild crazy and whatnot. Cause they know that's what sells, you know, it gets more views, or this person has beef with that person, or they're cooking this person, that person being exposed. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the controversy sells, man. Controversy sells, but they're also trying to bring, like I said, the prison politics aspect behind it, man. If they could ice pick you, man, they would.
Exactly. So
It's like Oz, man. You know, there's a lot of added BCs walking around looking for tits.
oh man, oh hell no. Nah, but that's the main difference. So for the Black Brain Trust, the channel elevates itself above that because it's like, man, well, we're not gonna be involved in these beefs or whatever, man, because YouTube is just a hobby. YouTube's a hobby. We got our own money coming in. You know, it's mostly professional brothers. You, Dr. Phoenix, Abidan, you know, Johnny Blaze, Super Triz, Ty City. Like you guys don't need YouTube beef to stir the pot and then to have more viewers coming in. So, and that's the biggest problem with the Negro Manosphere, because it's like every single season there's like this new beef, new bullshit. I mean, I mean, just the other day I was listening to Jay Sean, and like, you know, in that other channel they were talking shit about Jay Sean for no reason, just to stir up the pot. I'm like, geez, this is crazy.
It shows you that
No, you're confusing two things. The Negro Manosphere is O'Shea Duke Jackson's product. The Black Manosphere is Black people in the Black sector on
It's a
YouTube.
conjugation space.
Yeah, my bad.
Yeah, so the problem that you were talking about were not with O'Shea Duke Jackson, because he don't engage in that kind of stuff. What you were talking about is just in Black YouTube in general. So I just wanted to make the distinction.
And the so-called Black, it shows that what Zoe Royalty was stating, it shows that the so-called Black manosphere for the most part lacks substance. And when something lacks substance, it's not going to last for long. It is going to, like a lot of these channels, going to unfortunately dry out. You know, and as a person who created content for almost 13 years, I've seen channels follow that same route, and years later they became dried out. It becomes played out. So it's going to be a matter of time until these channels who purposely engage in these controversies to draw, you know, an audience, it's going to be a matter of time until they become irrelevant. So, you know, I'm not even so worried about them.
Got something to say, Ty City?
Nah, man. I fucks with Jay Sean, man. That motherfucker, he popped up like Candyman in the mirror, bro. they said his name, bro. That motherfucker broke motherfuckers down one by one, man. Oh, we gonna get to him. We gonna get to him.
Yo, word.
Yo, he don't leave nobody out, bro.
Yeah.
Nah, but on the cool, man, I was finna say, before Triz told us not to walk on his yard.
Yeah.
I think a lot of this street cred stuff, man, is I ain't even gonna lie, bro. It's deeply ingrained in the culture, bro. You know what I'm saying? It really is, man. It's especially as a BM, constantly having to prove yourself. You know what I'm saying? With no real benchmark, like you have to, you always have to constantly play into different narratives. just to like survive sometimes, man.
Which narratives are those?
It's just like in certain environments, man, you not you seen as weak because you won't do certain things, or you 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 could. I remember when I couldn't even play with the kids like 3 doors down from us, right? When I was staying with my granddaddy, because my granddaddy knew how that household was ran, bro. You know what I'm saying? So I have to go to school with these kids. You know what I'm saying? If I don't I'm I can't associate with y'all. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You're being brought up in a household where there's structure, and and you have to you got to be around people who are functioning on a whole different level. You know what I'm saying? You are going to be outcasted somewhere.
So let them outcast you. So what? Let them outcast you.
Nah, trust me, bro. Trust me, bro. I trust me, bro. Dog. I wasn't affected by it, but I could see how a lot of other people would be.
Yeah, the lack of interaction and conjugating with people who look like you becomes a problem. Because then you
especially in
start
high
question.
school.
Yeah, you start to question your identity, and
Yep.
there's a whole book written about this by Joseph C. Phillips called "He Talked Like a White Boy." Talks about that in the very first chapter, the impact of that. So, in trying
Like,
to adapt to the culture
mhm.
itself that's already not working or dysfunctional or regressive, that also plays into this. So, if you haven't read that book, man, I'm not saying it's a good book. I'm saying it touches on these issues. There's a lot of problems, like what Ty City went through. Had Ty City grew up in, let's say, Bel Air or something like that, man, he might have came out vastly different. Maybe might not like it. He might not like a Dotson. He might like a
Relax, man. Relax, man.
he, he might like a BMW 318 Ti hatch.
Oh, the funny back.
Yeah, you
Nah,
like those, man.
that ain't me, fam.
Yeah, rear wheel drive hatchback.
Nah, that ain't me, fam. The funny
No,
back BMW, not me, fam.
me growing up in New York City in the 90s where it was rough. I mean, it was rough growing up as a kid. I had to develop a mindset where I no longer gave a shit about what people think of me. You know, my thing is if I have to stand alone in order for me to live righteously, I will. And fuck everybody else. I had to develop that mindset. And more black males or black men, we have to develop the mindset where we just say, fuck you. You know, if you don't accept me for who I am, I'm not going to fall down that path that society want me to fall down in, for I can end up becoming enough statistic. And if anyone has an issue or look at me in a negative way, fuck you. Fuck you. You
Yo,
know, and I
I'm gonna tell
literally
you,
told that to plenty of so-called black people in my lifetime. In their face. Fuck you. And I told that to plenty of so-called black females. Fuck you and the bitch that made you. You
hey,
know?
you know what? I'm gonna tell you when I had that awakening, bro. When my daddy was doing this thing, man, I was laced head to toe. I was always fresh. When he went to the pen, and my mama sent me to go stay with my granddaddy, I'll never forget, man. Hey, hey, that school year, my granddaddy bought me some work boots to go to school in, bro.
Wow.
Yeah, yo, hey, bro,
You don't like Tim's?
bro, don't even get me started, bro. Hey,
He
but you
bought you
know
some
what?
caterpillars.
But my granddaddy, he gave me so much responsibility though. Like he would let me drive his truck around, like as a youngin, just drive his truck around. I just drive to my cousin's house stuff, but it was just one of those things where I didn't care. Like I, I felt better than everybody anyway.
Yeah. Let's go to Johnny Blaze. And then we'll go to Zoro Royalty and close out.
I just want to make one little comment here. Something about that book, Talk Like a White Boy. I'm gonna give you a real life example. 1983. I'm 10 years old, and I remember being in school, and one of the guys I'm in class with. That's what he tells me. He says, "Man, you talk white." Here it is. I'm being told at 10 years old by another black kid that I talk white. It astounds me, when I hear stuff like that.
Mhm.
And I'm like, okay, what does black sound like? He says, not you.
Right. He's talking about referring to Negro dialect, right?
Yeah. And this is 1983, when this is happening.
Mhm.
But and it's not. I mean, that's the first time. It wasn't the last time, but it was definitely the earliest experience that I can remember.
Mhm.
Someone telling me that.
Mhm.
Third grade.
Yeah, they, for whatever reason, black people collectively seem to look for, I guess, for cultural traits that they can actually identify with, even though I see many BWs walk around with the nasally voice, it come off like Hillary from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and nobody seems to have a question with that, or ever questions that part of BWs. But for BMs, man, they require that thing to be like up front and center, as a high priority, even though it doesn't really garner anything of relevance, at least in context of social mobility. You don't really gain any you're not getting any a 10% boost in pay because you have a baritone voice.
Right. And here's the interesting thing, during this time, all the folks who I went to school with, none of us lived in the projects. I mean, we were in a lower middle class, neighborhood, which is the weird thing. I mean, when I was younger, I did live in the projects, moved out. But, we all live in, we all got homes, most of us had two parents at the time.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
still, there was always this underlying narrative that uh, basically saying that people who spoke like me did not meet the black culture, at least in his eyes, and other people like him.
Yeah, there's a benchmark that they're
Yeah.
trying to establish, not realizing that benchmark, and that goes to my point about the street credibility, right?
Mhm.
These sort of benchmarks, these artificial metrics that they're imposing onto everyone else, doesn't really have any merit outside of the community itself.
But I find it interesting that somebody is putting this kind of information into the mind of a 10-year-old that early.
Well, they talk about slapboxing. Look at Trayvon Martin. His people's taught him. I think his father taught him how to slapbox. And that's exactly what he did to George Zimmerman. Except that only went so far before he put a firearm out. So
these things, what Johnny Blaze was mentioning, are things marketed to young so-called black boys in order to condition them to be to be a buffoon, to be derelict, and hopefully violent, to grow up feeling the prison population in America, thus continuing a cycle of legalized slavery, being that legalized slavery of today is when you're in prison. So it's conditioning us to become to remain a statistic of being criminals. And that's the stuff that pissed me off. Like we have to stop that conditioning to young so-called black boys. It's damaging. It is damaging to, when I hear what Johnny Blaze was saying, the fact that a 10-year-old is being shamed and is being looked upon as him not quote unquote acting or sounding like his quote unquote race because he articulates himself properly. And you tell the 10-year-old boy that? It's amazing, man. It's
right,
amazing. So
it's a form of hazing.
Yeah.
It's a form of
Yeah.
hazing.
So the new Mike, the new benchmark today is if you're a so-called black man and you're over 30 and have no kids, then you must be gay. I listen. I lost count of how many so-called black people question my sexuality because I don't have any children, and I'm like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how people can think that having children or not having children has anything to do with who you're attracted to.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, where's the logic in that?
Well, because they need some form of barometer to measure black male sexuality, right? See, BW sexuality is not to be questioned at all. It's fluid, it's situational. Dr. Phoenix has talked about this. We talked about this about with young MA. They can just basically dress up as a male and still garner the same protections of a woman. It's really weird how they articulate themselves in their place in the greater society. And you're not to question them at all.
Hey, Mike. Now they saying if they make more money than you, they more man than you.
Oh yeah, yeah. Remember last year, they went to Hallmark to get Happy Father's Day cards for single black.
No.
Yeah, that was
You lying.
Wow.
You
Yeah,
lying.
they
Oh
saying they're
my
not submitting.
God.
They won't submit to somebody who make less money than them now. It's like
yeah.
now
That was
now
well, yeah.
Well, wait till 2053 though.
Well, they won't make it that far, but yeah, that Hallmark thing was actually a thing, man. They actually printed a few cards before there was a pushback on that, man. That was really extreme. That was the extreme side of the gynocracy at work.
And plus to add to this is the fact of hazing is this is the reason why, and this is me speaking as as a Haitian American. Like when you look at like Miami, New York, yeah, there's a lot of Haitian Americans who excel, but then I do have family members who got into the criminal lifestyle because they were bullied, saying that, oh, you Haitian, you this, that, and the third, you talk funny, whatever. So for them to survive in the New York City public school system, they had to act hood, learn how to fight, and do all this. And it's like in the end, just like what Wacky World says, they end up being in the prison industrial complex. You see this with some Jamaican some Jamaican Americans, some Trinidadian Americans. It's unfortunate that you have these parents who come over here and then their kids get enamored with this culture because they have to fit in, because especially when you're in high school, you want to fit in. If you don't fit in, you're kind of ostracized and whatnot. So, but it doesn't bring anything of value to them. All they end up is, in jail or shot up dead, or what I'm saying, just being permanently injured. So yeah, man, to me, this is the biggest problem, that you have the ADOS culture in the city, being it's corrupted, the culture is corrupted, but then you have like in the suburbs, you have ADOS black families that are in the suburbs. You have these kids who never been to the hood in their life, and they're living that criminal lifestyle. I see this in New York and Long Island. I have cousins in Long Island be part of that criminal lifestyle, and it boggles my mind. I'm like, why are you doing this? You got a nice house, you got a nice family, mom, dad is working. Why are you part of that? And then they end up dead or in jail. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous that it's spreading.
It's a waste of offspring.
It's a waste. It's a waste of offspring, Mike. That is so true. It's a waste of offspring, and it's sad. It's really sad.
MOT.
Yeah.
No, I'm good. No, go ahead.
Okay.
To point out, to piggyback off of what Zoe Royalty said, I'm also of quote unquote Haitian American descent, and I had a family member who migrated to this country from Haiti and tried to fit in try to fit into the peer pressure that was given to him, saying, all this shaming him for all this nonsense, whatever, what have you. So, so to make the long story short, he succumbed to the peer pressure, got involved with the criminal lifestyle. One day, punched a police officer in the face, then got his ass beat by a bunch of police officers, then got indicted, then got deported. So it's like, but yeah, growing up, when I was a teenager, I moved into the suburbs in Long Island, and I went to one of the top 500 high schools in the United States. And it was a very good public school system. And a lot of the so-called black kids who, like Zoe Royalty was pointing out, who never ever seen a hood before, quote unquote hood before, got involved in the criminal lifestyle. And it amazes me. Me coming from the hood and moving to a better community, it amazes me. I'm like, wow. It's like you're trying to portray a lifestyle that your parents kept you away from. and to me, it'll make, oh my gosh, it's like, wow, look at this fuckery. It's like this, oh boy. Sorry for my rant.
Nah, it's cool, man. We'll close it out on that, man. Thank you all for joining us, man. Hit the like button if you're not already done so, and share the video if possible. Hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust, including those posted on the community tab. And we will see you tomorrow on Geopolitics. Peace and shalom.